Are you willing to accept the challenge to push yourself outside of your comfort zone in order to achieve your next level of greatness, happiness, and prosperity? If you answered yes to that very question, then Kevin Palmieri wants to hear from you. He's got his own story of redemption, perseverance, resilience, and growth to share. After overcoming depression and a suicidal ideation, he became passionate about entrepreneurship and self-improvement. He now spends his days as the co-founder and co-host of Next Level University. It's a podcast with over 1,000 episodes, over 600,000 listens in over 125 countries. The goal of the effort is simple: to take a holistic view of self-improvement, to maximize potential and reach for the highest heights of what is possible. Palmieri joined me this week to have a conversation about holistic self-improvement, personal development, growth, and what it means to set a great example of endless perseverance and an unwavering commitment. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. A moment to welcome you to the program, buddy. I'm excited to learn all about your life journey this afternoon. Great to be with you, and thanks so very much for being here.
Kevin, it is my pleasure, and as you said behind the scenes, I like your first name very much.
It's a keeper, isn't it?
It is a keeper, 100%. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin, and I know that you have quite the journey of sort of redemption and resilience to share with me this afternoon. So I'm wondering if you can share it with me this afternoon and what makes you so fabulous and how you got to where you are today, buddy.
Well, thank you for the compliment. Yes, I was raised in a single parent household. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, and I always kind of thought a little bit differently than the crowd. So after high school, all my friends went away to college. I knew college wasn't for me. I didn't know what I wanted to do, Kev, but I knew college wasn't the answer. So I just started working different jobs. I pumped gas. I worked at a hospital. I was a forklift operator, a truck driver. I was many, many different things in my early life. But I eventually got this unique job in the weatherization industry. So all weatherization is we go into schools and big buildings and make them more energy efficient. That was my job in a nutshell. And this job was a very high paying job, which I was very grateful for. And I worked very, very hard to make a lot of money. And Kev, if you looked at me when I was in my mid-20s, 25 years old, you would assume I was very successful. I had a beautiful girlfriend. I had this high-paying job. I had a sports car. I had just won a bodybuilding show. So all things considered, it seemed like I was very successful. But I was pretty miserable. I wasn't fulfilled. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I just wasn't excited for life. And one day, my girlfriend came to me and said, "Hey, I want to move across the country." So we live on the East Coast. I want to move across the country and I want to chase my dreams. I want to live in California. And I gave her every reason in the world why she shouldn't do it. And she ended up leaving me and going and chasing her dreams, which is exactly what she should have done. But when she did that, Kev, I had to look in the mirror and I realized I didn't really like who I was. I wasn't proud of the man I was. I wasn't excited to be me anymore. So that's when I got into self-improvement. and personal development. And that was the very beginning for me. And the next year, I focused on making as much money as humanly possible because I assumed more money would bring more happiness. And I ended up making $100,000 that year. But I remember when I opened my final pay stub of the year, I had a very similar moment where I have more money, I still have a lot of nice things, but I'm not happy. I don't feel good about me. I don't feel great about my life, about who I am as a human. So I realized that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I started a podcast called the Hyper Conscious Podcast, and that is the beginning of where my journey began.
Yeah, and I know, Kevin, you have a unique perspective on the word perseverance, because I know that your life journey also included some ups and downs, and really had you soul searching for the person that you wanted to become, which ultimately led you to entrepreneurship. So I wonder if you can tell me about it.
Yeah. So the interesting that happened, Kevin, is after I made the money at the company I was working for, and I realized that that wasn't happiness for me, that wasn't success, that wasn't what I really wanted. It didn't fill a void that I thought it would. I almost stopped caring overnight about my job. So I would call out, I would leave the job site early, I'd show up late, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I was out of alignment, and I just was burning the candle at both ends. And I realized, well, it's not worth it. Me being here is not worth it because I don't want to work for this money anymore. I don't want to do it like this. But I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have any idea of what I could do. And it got to the point, Kevin, where, and speaking to your point of perseverance and resilience, I was in a hotel room 7 hours away from home. My alarm went off at probably 5:15 in the morning. I sat up, I slid to the edge of the bed, I was lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it is there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. One was saying, you're stuck here forever. One was saying, if you do leave, what will your friends think? If you do leave, what will your family think? And do you really think you're going to leave your job and become a successful podcaster? And in that moment, I felt that if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me. Now, luckily, Alan, my business partner and mentor at the time, had an open line, and I messaged him, and I felt like I could be vulnerable with him. I told him what I was going through, and he said, Kev, so much has changed over the last few years for you, but your environments have kind of stayed the same. I think you need to change your environment. So I ended up leaving that job 2 or 3 months later and going full-time into what we're doing today. And in the very beginning, I didn't understand I was becoming an entrepreneur. I didn't really understand how any of this worked, but I did know that I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to be my own boss. And even at a deeper level, I wanted to have a large impact on the world. And I knew that this was the way to do it, whether it's podcasting, speaking, coaching, whatever it is. But this felt right to me. I felt like this is where I belong and this is what I should be doing. And that's really how it started. I didn't know I was going to be a business owner. I didn't know I was going to be an entrepreneur, but I'm very glad I took those leaps. And I used a lot of the pain that I experienced to keep me going.
Yeah, and Kevin, I'm wondering and fascinated to ask you, if you had a message or a roadmap for people to follow in terms of learning from failure to ultimately achieve success, how do you think we can learn from failure to achieve our ultimate success?
I think that failure is this interesting thing where, so think of it this way. This is the best analogy. This is the best roadmap I could create. When you're trying a new recipe, things oftentimes go wrong. And let's even go deeper than that. Imagine if you're trying to create your own recipe to make, just say, chocolate cake. This is what's going to happen. You're going to create your ingredients. You're going to say, well, this is what I think needs to happen. I'm going to mix them together. Okay, cool. Everything's good. I'm going to put it into this pan. I'm going to put it in the oven. I'm going to put it in for X amount of time. And hopefully the product, the end result is good. But we don't necessarily think of our lives that way. And realistically, all your life is a series of you preparing for something, doing something, reflecting on the result you got, and then making any necessary changes. That's why failure is so important, because the necessary changes you need to make are usually based on your failures. The way you prepare next time is based on your previous failures. The way you show up is based on your previous failures. So just to use the cake analogy, the only way to make the cake the best it can possibly be is to find out all the ways to not make it the best it can possibly be. And I think we use the word failure in a negative way, when in reality, if it's productive, if it's constructive, if it's progressive, then it's just par for the course. So I would say that's kind of the roadmap is you prepare for something, you show up and do it, you reflect on the results you got, and then you try to make changes according to that. I would say that's the roadmap.
Yeah, and Kevin, I was fascinated to talk to you today because, at the end of my bio, it says that my level of fulfillment doesn't come from personal achievement. It comes from putting smiles on the faces of people that I'm able to impact. So I'm curious, what does it mean to you to maximize your level of impact and really make a transformational difference?
So it's a wonderful question. I try to look at it from a couple perspectives. So when I think of impact, I think of breadth and I think of depth. Breadth is the amount of people I can impact. Depth is the level at which I can impact each person. So when I think of impact, I think of just the cumulative number of human beings I have the opportunity to add value to, whether it's through the podcast, whether it's through a speech, through coaching, whatever it may be, whether it's me going through the drive-through and putting a smile on somebody's face when I'm getting my coffee. That to me is impact. So I look at it from the perspective of how many people can I help and how deeply can I help them. The podcast is going to help a lot of people, but not necessarily at the level of Kevin and I talking behind the scenes. I can help people more behind the scenes than I can in front, but you can only help so many people behind the scenes. So I'm looking at it from how do I use my time to maximize as many people, maximize helping as many people as humanly possible. And then, but I also think of it, Kevin, on a day-to-day basis. If I show up at the drive-through, the supermarket, a restaurant, the gym, and I have a positive conversation with somebody, that's impact to me. So I'm really always thinking of how do I leave this interaction better than it was when I got here? How do I make sure this is a positive experience for this person? So I try to look at it from multiple different angles, I'd say.
Yeah, and Kevin, as you know, buddy, I was born personally with cerebral palsy, buddy, and part of the reason that I wanted to start this podcast was because I wanted to create a platform and a safe space for people to really feel like we're building an inclusive culture. So what does it mean to you to build an inclusive culture, and what's your definition of diversity and equity, buddy?
Yeah, wonderful question. And I love the cause. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I believe that my perspective of inclusivity is leaving nobody behind, making sure everybody feels safe, psychologically safe to be themselves. So much to the point where I used to introduce our podcast, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. And after talking to my wife, we were talking about the fact that, well, there's people out there that don't necessarily identify as a lady or a gentleman. So I switched it from that to Next Level Nation. Welcome back to another episode, because I want to be more inclusive. I want people to feel like I'm talking to them, even if I don't necessarily have the same experience, even if I don't necessarily have the same orientation, the same skin color, whatever it may be. I want them to feel like they belong. I want them to feel included. I think at a deep level, Kev, everybody wants to feel like they belong, and we're all searching for where we belong. So when it comes to inclusivity and diversity, I think that's the things I really look at is how do I help everybody feel like they belong? They feel like they are supported here. They feel like they are welcomed here, and they can say, I am the type of person who belongs here. I really think that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, tell me about the growth of your podcast, buddy, because I know from talking to our mutual buddy Alan, who's a business partner, you started the podcast from humble beginnings, but you've really grown it into a business and a movement that's sustainable. So tell me all about it.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I started the podcast very early by myself. 2017, I started a podcast called the Hyper Conscious Podcast. We were just having deep conversations with deep humans. That was the goal. After I left my job, Alan and I partnered up, and we made it our mission to bring holistic self-improvement to the masses. And we want to have the most successful personal development brand ever of all time. That's really our ultimate goal. But we take a heart-driven but no BS approach to holistic self-improvement. So we try to help people level up their life, their love, their health, and their wealth. And that's why we're called Next Level University, because there's always another level. But I think the interesting thing for us, Kev, is we really, really, really try to think from the perspective of our community. So we do 7 episodes a week, not because we want to do 7 episodes necessarily. It's because there's 7 days in the week. So we want to make sure we're dropping an episode every single day. So our goal really is to help people holistically. It's to help people become more well-rounded. It's to help them in their relationships, help them with their health, help them with their wealth. A one-stop shop for self-improvement is really our ultimate goal. We just crossed our 1,000th episode a couple weeks ago, which I'm very, very happy about. And to your point, things are going better than they ever have. Our listens are the most they've ever been. So it seems like our community is liking what we're doing, and we're growing our community every single day, which we're very, very grateful for.
Yeah, and to do those many podcasts, buddy, I'm curious to get your definition of what it means to be committed to something. So what's your definition of commitment?
My definition of commitment is, I would say, staying attached to the result regardless of the resistance along the way. So that would be one definition. And I think the other definition would be tied to making sure you're making progress. So what's the difference between a relationship and a committed relationship? A relationship, you might say, well, we're just in love and it's going to be fine. I don't really have to work on it too much. I don't really focus on it. It is what it is. Where a committed relationship, you are committed to being a better partner. You're committed to being more patient. You're committed to being more supportive. So I think it's that extra touch of not only do I want this, but I want this to be the best it can be. And I think it's really staying focused on it, staying focused on the result you want for a long period of time, regardless of the resistance you face. I would say that would be my definition of commitment.
Yeah, commitment. And just building on that point, how do you think we define universal prosperity, Kevin? Because I'm all about bringing people together. In today's society, as I'm sure you can concur, there's so many elements in today's society that attempt to bring us apart. So I'm always about talking to people, whether it be through this podcast or otherwise, on building bridges of understanding and unity. So tell me, how do we build a better society where we can all benefit from prosperity?
I think it starts with the individual. I really do. I believe that society can only evolve to the level of the individuals within it. So it starts by everybody taking a look in the mirror and saying, okay, what can I do to be a little bit better today? What can I reflect upon within my past to understand myself at a deeper level? And what value can I give back to the world? I think that, again, the world is made up by a massive amount of people, but not everybody is working to understand themselves, understand the world, and understand other human experiences every day. So the simplest answer, Kev, for me is I think it really starts with everybody listening and watching. It starts with them saying, okay, what can I do today that is going to improve my life just a little bit? My family's life just a little bit, my friends' lives just a little bit. And then I do believe that will ripple outward. A lot of the people who have had really large positive impacts in the world, they worked really hard on themselves. They built a community based on that. And then that community helped other people help other people, and you rinse and repeat that. So yeah, I think it starts with the personal responsibility that I can get a little bit better today, whatever that means to you, thus pouring more into somebody else's cup so they can pour more into somebody else's cup.
And Kevin, when we look at society as a whole, and if you had a magic wand to sort of reshape the way we look at the world today, how would you reprioritize societal priorities so that other people can benefit, while also benefiting individually as well?
I think one shift, a simple shift would be, how can I leave this, whether it's environment, situation, person, conversation, how can I leave this a little bit better than I found it? One of those things of, imagine this, I'm walking by the trash and I go to throw something in the trash and I miss it. There's two reactions that can happen. Oh, I littered, I should go pick that up, or, well, somebody else will get that. I think if it's more about the first one, that would be a wonderful place to start, because it's based on a little bit of change, a little bit of improvement, where I don't think people always think about that. And another good analogy for that, some people, when they have Halloween parties or they're getting ready for trick-or-treaters, they'll put a bowl of candy outside their house and they'll just say, take one. If more people just took one instead of pouring the whole thing into their pillowcase, that candy would go a lot further along, and who knows what would happen. Somebody might get a piece of candy, meet somebody who doesn't have a piece of candy, and give them a piece of candy, and they might pay that forward. So yeah, I really think it's something along the lines of understanding that you can have a really big impact on a situation, even with small, seemingly insignificant actions.
Yeah, when you look at your own personal life model, I'm curious to ask you, what inspires you to sort of maximize your own potential and motivate yourself to push beyond your comfort zone?
I believe at a deep level that what happens oftentimes is people achieve success and they achieve what seems like unrelatable lives, and they struggle to help people at that point. And one of my things, Kevin, my goal, my ultimate goal in life is to become the most extraordinary version of myself humanly possible, but never to forget what it was like not to be. And my goal really at a deep level is to help people become more aware across the board. And when it comes to learning, when it comes to unlearning, relationships, because I believe that if the self-improvement set point of the world was just a little bit higher, everything in the world would be a little bit different. That's really what motivates me. That's really what inspires me. And I would say at a deep level also, I get to actually see concrete change in our community. The people who listen to our podcast that reach out and leave us reviews and all that, I've seen so much change from people who didn't believe that they could go back to school, and they went back to school and got really good grades and went on to get their dream jobs and moved. And it keeps me going, because there's actual change that you can see in the world, and that's super inspiring. And then I think the last thing is, I want to be proud. At the end of the day, when I put my head down and I said, did I make myself proud today? Did I have an impact? I want to be able to say yes every day. That's something to aim for me.
Yeah, and Kevin, in the few minutes that I have left with you, I'm curious to ask you about your non-negotiables in life. Something that you're not willing to compromise on for your own happiness.
I would say, if I would put it into three simply, one would be exercise daily. That's one of my non-negotiables. It hasn't always been, but now I understand, especially with the way my schedule's filled up, it's very important to do it every day, because not only does it help me physically, but it really helps me mentally to be working out every day. So that's one non-negotiable. Another non-negotiable is tracking finances every day. I believe that is unreasonably important, especially when you're running a business. And I would also say Another one is gratitudes. So every night before my wife and I go to bed, we say one thing that we're grateful for about one another. If we do miss, I try to make sure I do two the next day to catch up. So I would say those are three simple non-negotiables. And the last one, Kev, you'll appreciate this one. Never missing a podcast episode. Our goal is to do an episode every single day for as long as we're on this planet, unless, I get to 80 and I change my mind. But that's the goal, an episode every single day.
It's a labor of love, isn't it?
100%, my friend.
Absolutely. And so my last question for you has to do with your own personal and professional legacy. And, when I look at the legacy, I look at leaving trails of impact, which leave generational impact and influence. So when you look at your legacy, how do you want that to be defined?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think about that fairly often. I really think more about how people feel about how I made them feel. If when I go, somebody says, Kevin made me feel really supported. He made me feel really heard. He was just a good person. He was patient. He was humble. That's, for me, I think that's what the legacy is about, is having people remember me in a positive light, not necessarily what I did for them, but how I made them feel. I think that's something that I'm really, really focused on, and something I take very, very personally.
Yeah, and Kev, just very quickly, if people want to get connected with you, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, the best place is probably Instagram. My handle is @NeverQuitKid. I do all my social media. I do all my DMs. So if you have any questions, anything you need, please do not ever hesitate to reach out.
Well, Kev, I have to tell you that's ever creative social media handle there.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll stand out with that one. But I want to thank you for being here today to talk about personal development, gratification, and life transformation, buddy. Your work in the space, and time on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me today.
It was my pleasure, Kevin. Again, the best name in the business, so I had to do it. I appreciate you having me on, buddy.